Episode 86, The Northern Campaign. Welcome to the History of the Bible. In this episode, we will be in Joshua chapter 11. In the last episode, we introduced some of the kings and their cities that would ally together to come against Joshua and the Israelites. With a number of men, probably closer to 40,000 troops and only 2,000 chariots, we began to look at chariots and their development of them. The Northern Alliance would gather at the Waters of Merom. All the while, Joshua and the Israelites would be making camp back at Gilgal. Gilgal was the location where the Israelites made camp after crossing the Jordan River and coming into the land of Canaan. Gilgal would be the place that the Israelites would return to after every campaign. Therefore, the Israelites returned to Gilgal after defeating and taking dominance over the central hill country of Canaan. When the Gibeonites came to make peace with the Israelites, it was at Gilgal. When the Gibeonites requested assistance from the kings that had gathered against Gibeon, it was sent to the Israelites at Gilgal. Once the Israelites defeated the southern portion of Canaan, they would return to Gilgal. All that to say, the location from which the Israelites returned to was where the invasion had all begun, where the 12 stones stood after crossing the Jordan River as an altar to remind the Israelites of what the Lord had already done in getting them into the land. It was from here that the Israelites would wage the battles within the land of Canaan. There is another reason why the Israelites would always return to the same location. Remember that the east side of the Jordan River was already controlled by the Israelites, the 2.5 tribes of Israel. Therefore, the camp's location was backed up against the land already conquered. Consequently, they wouldn't need to worry about being attacked from the east, only the west. The camp's location would allow troops from the 2.5 tribes to go back home to help families in the cities on the east side of the Jordan River if needed. In addition to the location being well situated, the rest of the tribes of the Israelites had their families and household belongings with them. When the battles were being waged in the central hill country and in the southern parts of Canaan, the Israelites were not bringing their families, livestock, and belongings with them. They were all left at Gilgal. That is why the Israelites would always return to Gilgal. The camp was just east of the former city of Jericho. It would be from Gilgal that Joshua and the Israelites would come from in the coming battle against the Northern Alliance. As for the army of the northern kings, again, they were located at the Waters of Merom. For a long time, the Waters of Merom were thought to be associated with the lakes that were north of the Sea of Galilee, feeding the Jordan River. However, the issue with this is that if it were the lakes, it would not be referred to as the waters, but rather, lakes were often called yam, which means sea. Another suggestion has been made that it could have been the valley of Huleh, but this wouldn't make any sense based on the land's topography. This valley was narrow, preventing the northern armies from using their chariots. Therefore, some scholars believe it wasn't the valley of Huleh or the lakes north of the Sea of Galilee. Rather, it's believed that its location today is called Tel Karnia Hittin. Another name that it goes by is the Horns of Hattin. This place is believed to be located west of the Sea of Galilee, with the belief that the mount nearby could be the location where Jesus would later give his Sermon on the Mount message. The Horns of Hattin is an extinct volcano crater with 2 peaks on either side, and it is believed to have been once a location of a Canaanite town, which is where all the kings would meet up. It is also believed to have become the battlefield in which the Battle of Hattin was fought. This was a battle that was waged in 1187 AD during the time of the Crusaders in the land of Israel. However, other scholars believe that the location of the kings meeting up is Jebel Maran. With certainty, the kings met up in Upper Galilee, as there is evidence from the Egyptian and Assyrian records of the town being conquered during their campaigns in Upper Galilee hundreds of years after Joshua. The reason that Jebel Maran is believed to be the location is that the city is along the road that would have been used by the Egyptians and Assyrians in their campaign to conquer Galilee. Also, in the translation of the manuscripts, it's believed that one of the kings who joined the Northern Alliance was from the city Madon, based on the Hebrew text. However, the Greek text read that the king of Madon was the king of the city of Maron. Later on, it would become known as Merom. This would make sense, and that why would the meeting place for all the kings be at a location where the king of the city was not with the Northern Alliance? As for the battle that Joshua and the Israelites fought against the northern kings, more details need to be given. It begins in Joshua 11, verses 7 and 8. So Joshua and all of his fighting men traveled to the water near Merom and attacked suddenly. And the Lord gave them victory over their enemies. The Israelites chased them as far as Greater Sidon and eastward into the valley of Mizpah until not one enemy warrior was left alive. Although some scholars and sources do try to retell the details of the battle, this is that retelling of the story. The northern king's camp was in the location called the Waters of Merom, while the Israelites camped in Gilgal. It's said to have taken the Israelites 5 days to march from Gilgal to the camp of the northern kings. The Waters of Merom is thought to be an open plain, which would allow for them to use their chariots on more favorable grounds. However, when Joshua and the Israelites came upon the encampment of their enemies, they surprised and attacked them, as it says in Joshua 11, verse 7. Some translations say attacked suddenly, while others say that they took the enemy by surprise. It's believed that when Joshua attacked, he used 2 different groups of men to make the attack, almost like a pincer movement. One group of men attacking would come up from the south, blocking the escape for the northern armies to move south, while the second group of men attacking came from the eastern direction. This would block them from retreating to the city of Hazor. When Joshua used the 2 groups to attack the enemy, it caught them off guard. So much so, the northern armies could not deploy their chariots for battle. The oncoming Israelites could have panicked the horses used for the chariots, adding to the confusion of a surprise attack. Unable to run back to the safest city, Hazor, as an escape, the northern armies would have to run northeast to flee from the Israelites. When the northern armies began running for their life, the Israelites would chase them down. It says in Joshua 11, verse 8, that they struck them until none remained alive. When the battle was finished, Joshua and the Israelites would return from the chase against the northern armies and take all the chariots and burn them. As for the horses, it says that Joshua had them hamstrung. For the horses to be hamstrung, this meant that they were made so by cutting the back of the horse's leg, separating the tendon at the back of the knee on the hind legs. The tendon on the hind legs was unable to reunite. Thus, it would leave the animal unable to do any type of quick action. Although the horses couldn't be used for battle, or unable to do any type of quick movement, they were still able to be used for farming. This practice of hamstringing horses wasn't only done by the Israelites. In reality, it was a common practice to do this to enemy horses in ancient times. The reason that it was commonly practiced in ancient history was because the horse would become disabled for its effectiveness in military action. Though Joshua was commanded to hamstring all of the horses and burn all of the chariots, often it was only done to those that were excessive. Most ancient armies would take the captured weapons, the horse and the chariot, and integrate them into their armies. However, if some horses and chariots could not be used, the horses were hamstrung and the chariots were destroyed. The reason for destroying the extra horses and chariots was so that they could not be recaptured by the enemy's armies and used once again against them. However, in the case of the Israelites, they were commanded by the Lord to hamstring all the horses and to destroy all of the chariots. There could be a couple reasons that the Lord commanded them to do this. One, it could have been so that the horses and chariots would not fall back into the Canaanites' hands and be used against the Israelites in battle. The second reason could be that the Israelites were not well trained in the use of the weapon of warfare, and it would cause more problems than solve. This means that if they didn't know how to use the weapon, it could cause more harm than benefit. Others say that the reason that the Lord called for the teams of chariots to be destroyed is because the Lord didn't want the Israelites to trust more in their weapons of war rather than the Lord himself. In either case, the Israelites did hamstring all of the horses that were used by the northern armies for their chariots. They also burned all of the chariots themselves. Often they were built out of wood so that they would be lighter. When using metal on these chariots, they were often used just as the linchpins for the wheels and maybe a coating of metal to go around the sides to protect the wood. When the battle was finished between the Israelites and the northern armies, Joshua turned back and attacked the city of Hazor. It was Jabin, the king of Hazor, who led the northern alliance against the Israelites. There's a link to the map of the northern battle within the show notes. For the time being, we're going to end the episode there and address the conquest of the city of Hazor in the next episode. Israel would then go on into the land and begin to conquer the cities that belonged to the kings that were part of the Northern Alliance. So join us next time in episode 87, The City of Hazor. Until next time, remember that you are loved, special, and worthwhile.